Welcome back to the OMB Law Board. I'm Simon Bennett, partner at OMB Solicitors, and today I've got Harley Wilkinson, one of our associates in the estate team. Harley, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Simon. Good to be here again.
Harley, we were talking about how passionate and how much in love you are with these testamentary trusts. What are they?
Yes. So testamentary trusts, they're becoming more and more popular in estate planning. So a testamentary trust is not all that different from a standard or ordinary family trust that anyone might establish at any point during their lifetime for whatever reason, to protect assets, manage a business, or to use as an investment vehicle. The difference between a ordinary family trust and a testamentary trust is that a testamentary trust only ever comes about after a person passes away. It is that person's will that establishes the trust structure. And what is different between a normal will and a testamentary trust will really comes down to control of and distribution of assets. That's really the key difference between the two. So where we've got a standard will, once an estate is administered to the point it's ready to be finalized, the estate is distributed to the beneficiaries of the will.
Yep.
If I was going to leave my estate to you, Simon, you would end up getting everything into your bank account.
Fantastic.
Sounds pretty good, doesn't
Sounds
it?
great.
So you've got complete control over that money. You can do whatever you like with it. If it's a lot of money, you're going to be paying interest on the income that it generates. If you're involved in a relationship breakdown, if you're sued, you've got creditors coming after you, or if you have any issues with respect to solvency, that is where that money is then at risk.
That doesn't sound so good.
No, it doesn't. But this is where you get the testamentary trusts that come in. And this is where you get a lot of benefit out of them, is that you can address some of these issues and prevent them from happening. So,
okay.
So something that I wanted to talk about is when and where these testamentary trusts are going to be worthwhile, and what some of the benefits are in that structure and having that in your will.
So I think that would be really informative. So as I understand it, what you've done now is you've created this will, and within the will, you've created a trust.
Yes.
Within the will document, which comes into effect upon my death for the benefit of my beneficiaries. Is that accurate?
That's essentially it, yes.
Okay.
So the one of the key differences there is about control of assets. So with the case of a standard will, you've got the beneficiary who is, when they receive their interest in the estate, they're the controller of those assets. They can do whatever they want with them. In the case of a testamentary trust, the estate assets go into that trust structure and they are legally owned and controlled by a trustee who has the day-to-day management over the trust, and they're responsible for how the income and capital the trust owns is applied for the benefit of the beneficiaries.
Okay, let's talk benefits of testamentary trusts.
So it's a bit difficult to know where to start because there really are so many.
They're that good, are they?
They are pretty good, yes.
Okay.
Look, I very highly rate them. So one of the big things is financial security and asset protection. The assets that go into that testamentary trust structure are insulated and not susceptible to creditors, to issues with regard to solvency that beneficiaries might experience, and to relationship breakdowns, like I was mentioning before.
So that's an interesting one for me. And it's something that comes up regularly where mum and dad have got a substantial estate.
Yes.
And they're leaving it to their children. but they're concerned that their children may get involved in a relationship which may break down, and they're concerned about the partner claiming a large chunk of their children's inheritance.
Yeah, look, I mean, one of the things, I suppose, something to acknowledge is that with relationships and everything else, we always hope for the best, but we plan for the worst.
Yep.
And that's really what this is about. So, and I think these days, a lot of relationships, unfortunately, are ending in divorce. And if and when that does eventuate for a child who's received an inheritance, where there aren't mechanisms in place set up under a will, that inheritance can be at risk in the event a child or any other beneficiary does go through family law proceedings. They've got to do a property settlement and go through a divorce. That on its own can be costly.
If I've got a testamentary trust, do the same worries exist, or do I have protection?
You have protection because the estate that goes into that trust is insulated and quarantined from those family law proceedings. Whatever that beneficiary owns in their personal name, their personal capacity, as well as jointly with their spouse, that's all going to go in and form part of the matrimonial pooled property that's divided up between them. But the assets in that testamentary trust are safe. They're protected from that. The same way if that beneficiary was ever sued or had creditors coming after them, particularly people in high-risk roles like doctors and lawyers, at the same time, if they're ever involved in any sort of bankruptcy proceedings or anything like that, what is in the trust is protected and safe in that structure.
So a great tool to protect generational and family wealth through inheritance.
Yeah. So that's a really, really big one there in terms of asset protection and financial security. Along with that, you do also get some really, really good tax benefits.
Tax minimization.
Yes. Yeah. And I think the best way to explain it is to use an example. So if you have the testamentary trust set up under a will and say there's $1 million that's going into that trust, that $1 million can be invested in any way the trustee or the controller of the trust decides and considers as appropriate. It could be in real estate, it could be term deposit, whatever it might be. If that trust is earning $50,000 to $100,000 in income each financial year, the trustee can distribute that to a broad range of beneficiaries. It might be the child of the will maker, it could be the grandchildren, it could be a combination of those beneficiaries, those possible beneficiaries. But the key is that the trustee can do it in a tax-effective way that minimizes the tax that would otherwise be payable if that primary beneficiary was earning that income themselves. So that $50,000, rather than the primary beneficiary paying tax at their marginal tax rates on that 50 grand, that 50 grand can be distributed between that primary beneficiary as well as any other grandchildren or other beneficiaries the trustee decides in the most tax-effective way possible.
Well, Harley, they certainly sound beneficial, and I can understand why you're so excited by these testamentary trusts. One last point that I think our listeners and our viewers will really be interested in is, if you don't do it in your will, can you fix it up later?
You can actually set up post-death testamentary trusts, but they do not have the same benefits as having it set up in your will. In fact, there are a lot of benefits that you miss out on. So, and going through that process, doing that involves a lot more expense and time at the other end. So if it is something that you're thinking about doing or you're considering, in particular, if you've got, if you own your home, you've got a property, you've got rental properties or other investments, it's really worthwhile protecting those assets. And it's worth going through the time and expense, which is a little bit greater than setting up a standard will, while you can. Like we said, hope for the best, plan for the worst, and having those testamentary trusts set up in wills is really one of the best ways to plan ahead and avoid risk.
Great advice. Thanks, Harley. Get your wills updated regularly. Insert a testamentary trust in your will so you don't need to worry about it later, and understand that it is an absolutely fantastic tool in your estate planning. Harley, thank you for your time today. That's been really informative, and I'm sure that our listeners and viewers have really appreciated it. If you've got any estate questions that you would like Harley to address, jump into the comments below and we'll make our best efforts to deal with those in future episodes. So thank you for your time today, Harley.
That's all right. Thanks for having me.